Welcome to West Tigers TV. This is the Coaches Report live from the mic'd up studio in Paramata. I'm joined on screen by the man himself, Adel Hage. He's a little bit heartbroken at the moment as his South Logan Magpies go down in the last minute, 32-30. So thank you, Adel. I promise I won't mention the last couple of minutes of that game, but you've got a new host in the chair tonight. You've had Rob, you've had Gary. Rob's probably glass half empty at time. I can be glass totally empty, but after a win, I promise I'll be on my best behaviour. But thank you for coming in and joining us tonight, mate, despite the heartbreaking loss.
Yeah, thanks, Eddie. Yeah, probably, I've had actually messages in the past from people who watch the podcast and tell me that it's good therapy for them. Let me tell you, this is probably more the therapy I need today after, the heartbreak we went through this afternoon. But, yeah, I can reflect back on Friday night and with a bit of happiness, I guess.
Little distraction for the next 45 minutes to an hour. We will get to individual breakdown of the tries and a tactical analysis of the game with Adel. But I'll start with, mate, you mentioned on the preview on Tuesday, you praised the side and the club for going over to New Zealand early, 3 days early. Benji mentioned it in his press conference that we went there early to get the job done, and they certainly did.
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things that it's a small thing, but it's obviously a big thing. And then preparation is so important when it comes to football games, especially traveling to another country. I think the time difference is 2 hours. So all that sort of stuff surely has to come into play when you're traveling. So, yeah, I have to praise the club and the team and whoever obviously was in charge of making that happen. I still have one more grievance, and that is when we travel to away games, which we don't have actually that many this year, which is good, travel games. But when we travel to away games, sometimes we have captain's run in Sydney and then travel after captain's run. And I've been involved with it with NRLW. It's a big day when you do it that way. So we'll see how we go with the other away trips.
I want to spend the first 5 minutes talking about, given this is Coach's Report, talking about Benji Marshall, because you were a staunch defender of him at times last year when he was getting criticism both in the media and on this panel. Has he surprised even you, not just with the roster he's putting together, but the results he's getting?
No, because the language, other than one player really in the last 24 months, the language the players have been using around their relationship in particular with him doesn't surprise me at all that this is where it's building to. I've always said it. The biggest challenge as a coach is having a playing group that wants to play for you, who believe in you, and will do anything for you. And you can be the most brainy coach out there. I mean, poor Anthony Seibold lost his job yesterday, and he's one of the most smartest coaches. If you've heard him chat and you talk to him rugby league, he's one of the smartest coaches out there. But X's and O's are only a certain part of rugby league, and it's almost secondary when it comes to coaching. You've got to be able to connect the group. You've got to be able to find a group that wants to play for you. And then third to that, you've got to be the coach that it starts to attract the right players to want to come to play in your club for you. So it doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest.
Well, one of his mentors was Wayne Bennett. I mentioned that on Claws Out, and the guys that go and watch the South training, Wayne Bennett's not out there doing all the tactical stuff on the field.
Yeah, and I guess Benji's got the little bit of advantage of the fact that he also is probably, I'm trying to think if anyone in that team could, but nobody actually couldn't walk into that team and say, I'm a better footballer than you, because he's probably a better football player than, 90% of the competition at the moment. So that respect is automatically given to start off with. So if you can have the balance of being a great player, but also know the intricacies about how to be a good man manager, well, there's going to be something good for you coming in the future.
What's his biggest growth as a coach? It's probably hard to judge given we're not inside the four walls 24/7, but I mean, coming into his third season, he was under pressure at times in the middle of last year. Where do you see as his biggest growth area, tactically or just in terms of man management? We saw the off-season clips, and it's hard to fake connection, and he talked about setting new standards. Do you think he's being harsher with the playing group, or just he's owning that group now because it's his?
Yeah, I think in that situation, you've got to credit the senior players. I remember the great Greg Popovich, coach of the San Antonio Spurs, or former coach, always talked about the fact that the only reason he was able to be a hard-nosed coach is because your Tim Duncans and your Manu Ginobili's, the great players in their tides, let them coach. They let him coach them the same way he'd coach a rookie. So I think you got to give credit to the senior playing group for allowing Benji to be that guy. Growth, yeah, it's what you said, mate. It's really hard to judge because you're not inside the four walls. But I guess the growth is what is the evidence we're seeing, and then the conversations and the languages the players are using. When you Terrell Mays and your Taylor Mays and these sort of guys are talking about Benji the way they talk about him, that's not fabricated. That's reality. That's exactly who he is and what he's bringing to the club. And I promise you this, Eddie, the outside looking in, if you're a player and players talk and you hear this stuff about him being one of the boys, which I know he's been criticised about in the past, but it feels like he's one of the boys you can talk to him. At the same time, you hear his language and how he expresses himself and that he wants the players to express themselves. When you're a guy sort of sitting there on the fringe or, you're going well and you've played Origin, but then you're starting to flatten career-wise, you may look and all of a sudden the Tigers become a destination, especially if they're winning football games, and you want to come join. So I think there's a lot more to this going forward and what he's being able to build. So I'm really excited for him, to be honest. I'm really happy for him in particular.
Absolutely. Last one on Benji. You mentioned in the press conference after the game that this was one of the most resilient performances and how proud he was of the group. Do you think he was speaking about the defensive mindset or the amount of times we had to repel New Zealand in that game?
I think it's the reshuffle. It's the next man up mentality. It's the fact that, with everything that happened last week, to go to New Zealand and be down the way we were, I think it's all of that packed into one. We'll talk strategy in a little bit of what I think, why we won that game. But, I think it's a build-up of what happened the previous week, going into the travel to New Zealand up against probably the second most informed team to the Panthers in the competition. So, I think it's a combination of both those things.
Before we get into the tries themselves, was there you mentioned why we did win that game. Was there anything tactically specifically that you saw in the lineup they put out or the style of play they executed on the field on Friday night?
Yeah, I think we flipped the script in regards to our numbers. If you look carefully, I will go back and have a look at our first couple of rounds to see if that's just become a trend. We've obviously identified, and that's including Tino coming in on the weekend, that our outside backs carry the ball really well out of yardage. So I reckon what we've almost talked about is the priority for our middles is not their numbers with the football, it's their numbers without the football, so defensively.
Is that almost the Penrith model?
Yeah, sort of, kind of. It's, to be honest, it's actually a system I like to play, and it's hard to get middles to buy in on it because their numbers don't look great. I am of the belief that if you use your outside backs out of yardage and you tell your middles realistically, unless we've got momentum and we're on a roll on, your job is to take a breather in attack, and you might have the one or two carries at some stage, and if we want to play a little bit of shape, you're getting involved. But other than that, it's about our outside backs to have 10, 15, 16, 17 carries a game. And that's what it was on the weekend. I think all five went over 100 metres. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's sort of looked like that's our strategy at the moment. And talking to our middles, especially against the Warriors pack on the weekend, talking to our middles about, hey, we'll take the load off you in attack, and especially out of yardage, you guys will do your job defensively.
I think that
want you to stick on your contact.
Something that the club identified maybe at the beginning of last season is out of yardage, our outside backs were struggling, but you've got strong ball carriers now, so you're able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think watching the game now twice, I did watch it the first time and I seen it a different perspective. I didn't really notice straight away how important our outside back carries were. But yeah, Tito in particular, he's the most underrated yardage carrier in the competition, I reckon.
And just defensively as a whole, we've conceded 50 points over the first three games. Is there anything you've noticed different compared to last year? Because, we've played the Cowboys, South and the Warriors, so three fairly good attacking sides, and the way the 6 again's being ruled, there's been plenty of points being scored. Is there anything different in the system, or it's just time on task, connection as a group?
I think our completion rates have been good. Last week wasn't as great, but I think that resilience in and around the middle of the field and our ability to control contact meant the ruck speed of the Warriors wasn't as impressive as it has been the first couple of weeks. When you win that and you can slow, and the point of contact to when the ball's played, if that can get around the 7-8 second mark, and obviously most play the ball speeds are about 3.5 seconds, that's judged basically from the moment the tackle is complete to the moment the ball is played. What you get before that is the moment from contact to when the tackle is actually complete. If that period of time, with control of the football, with the guy ending up on his back, and we're in control of our guys getting up, and being square at marker, if that period can be longer, it actually allows your line to set a little bit easier and becomes easier to defend the next tackle. So I think that's the part of our game we done really well on the weekend.
Let's get into the game itself. Adel, it was an arm wrestle, I guess, for the first 9 minutes, but the Warriors were the first to open the score. It was a fairly simple shift right, 3 passes right. They were 5 metres out, and Charles Nickel-Cookstead slides between Makasini and Luke Lalili. What did you make of that try?
Yeah, it was good defence. We got to a point where we had them, so our numbers were correct. Hamasi, it's 2 points, and this is the education for those two. And I love Benji sticking with them, by the way, because the more he sticks with them, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, later on, but Hamasi's got to be a little bit more direct in how he tries to make that tackle, not so much go laterally across the field. He's got to go and attack the inside hip of Chance to make the tackle a little bit earlier. Because even if you miss there and you do it from 5 metres out, let's say, you could probably bump him enough that he drops about 3 to 2 metres out. There might be help. Whereas he's gone across laterally. You try to make that tackle at the 2 metre line or at the 3 metre line, he could probably, with momentum, get himself over the line. The disappointing part is Luke disconnecting from the line. But that would have been a conversation they would have had to him straight after the try. And he's done that before and he's learned from it. So, yeah.
For the uneducated, who sort of makes that call when centre and winger either jam in together or choose to slide? Because it looked like sort of Makasini backed off and Luke sort of bit in a little bit, and there was just a little bit of a disconnect there.
You connect with your inside man. So your inside man's decision influences what you do. In that situation, if Hamasi's sliding, Luke's job is to keep square, so keep his shoulders and his hips directly facing the opposition try line, and he's got to have 2 shoulders in play. So if Chance does carry the football, and obviously, as we know, most players will carry the football in 2 hands. Once a player puts the football into 1 hand, well, then usually that means he's not going to pass the football. So if Luke keeps his right shoulder in play, and as soon as Chance comes to the outside of Hamasi, well, then his right shoulder can actually help Hamasi in the tackle. But, yeah, the disconnect of the line there basically means that it leaves Hamasi isolated.
16 minutes into the game, the Warriors find some joy going the same way. This time it was Wade Egan passing it to Tanner Boyd. And credit to Tanner Boyd, it was a nice short pass onto Labert. He squeezed between Jock Madden and Makasini. Was that a defensive error by Jock Madden in that case, or just good ball playing by Tanner Boyd?
No, so it's good line running from Laban. They've obviously identified that at some stage Hamasi will start to jam defensively. That's the toughest part of rugby league, right? So when those ball runners who are taught to run to the inside shoulder, so in that situation, all back rowers run to the inside shoulder of defenders because of the rule. Now, the hard part about this is the moment you see a back rower start to run to the outside shoulder, so they run a bit of an outline, usually that means they're going to get the ball because of the new rules. The moment someone does that, if he doesn't get the football, it's going to be a penalty because he's run to the outside shoulder. So I think we've got to be able to defend that a little bit smarter. Jock gets caught on his inside leg a little bit. So his weight is on his inside leg, which means his eyes are sort of disengaged with his guy. And that split second, he takes his eye off Laban and he slips outside him. He sort of loses his grip. The challenge there is for Hamasi is to stay as long as he can connected to Jock. He decided to go really early and try to put pressure on the tail runner out the back, but that's education, and that's one of those things that you look at in video, and they will continue to look at as a left edge this week because they probably know that Parramatta's coming that way because that's Parramatta's favourite side, and I'm sure that they'll work on it this week.
Obviously, Hamasi, 18 years old, he grew up playing in the centres, left centre, so that's probably his preferred position. But how much harder is it in the NRL defending in the centres compared to defending on the wing? How many more decisions are you having to make?
Not sure about a sort of number, but it's 100% harder. There is 2 types of shapes that teams like to run there. So shapes for centres where there's usually the guys having to make decisions with guys coming out the back. But some teams also, if they see centres who a little bit who struggle with decision making, will run lead lines with their centres going at them. So there is more decisions to be made there, more so than on the wing. Usually wingers have to make one decision or just stay connected to their inside guys. But you're right, Hamasi's done it growing up. It's a different level though, doing it that grade. There's a lot more scouting that gets done by teams week in, week out. We're talking about full-time footballers. So opposition teams are scouting that at the moment, and scouting on games doesn't happen the week of. So whoever we're playing in 2 weeks' time, they've got guys looking at our games for the first 3-4 rounds, and that just gets looked at so that when they come with planning around us. But yeah, I'm impressed with what Hamasi's doing at the moment, especially physically.
You mentioned the age of some of those outside backs. I think some people just forget just how young they are. 18, 19, and Tavana was 21 making his debut. So is that showing a lot of courage from the coach to stick with those guys and put them all in first grade at the same time in a big road game?
Well, the old adage is if you're good enough, you're old enough. And the reality is if that's our best team and they're our best players, you pick them. What we do know is obviously we've got Stafford, Taylor, who are walk-ups back into the side. So as soon as they come back from injury, they'll be our left centre and right centre. So it's just decision-making at the moment for Benji. And I think he's looking to attack the game a little bit more with that Tino selection on the weekend. So, yeah, I mean, it's probably a message to the whole group to say, hey, if you're performing, if you're doing the job and you're knocking on the door, well, we're going to give you an opportunity.
We spoke about slow starts last week, and it was the case again this week. Is it a mentality thing, or it's just a couple of unforced errors that are putting us under pressure because we're down 2 tries against both South and the Warriors?
It's mental toughness. You've got to be able to defend. In that first 20 in particular, there's going to be opportunities for opposition teams. I mean, we had some sets on their line. We've just got to be a little bit more tougher. We've got to make it a little bit harder for opposition teams early on the game, especially off the back of our mistakes, to be able to say to them, no, it's not going to be easy. And we did that for a long period of the game in the back end of the game. But, yeah, I mean, look, it's rugby league. Those sort of things are going to happen at times. It's just how you react to them and how you adjust to when momentum isn't going your way. And we did that really well on the weekend.
Little bit of a turning point, 20 minutes in. Tanner Boyd overhits a bomb, lands just in an in-goal, and the Warriors player tackles our player running out to the 20-metre. That's often a sin bin that would go against us. Do you think that was a fair decision to send him to the bin? I guess under the laws it is a sin bin.
Well, of course it's a sin bin. And Andrew Voss needs to just go and
jump in the
rugby
lake.
League numbers. Well, he's not first of all, he's not an expert on rugby league, and he professes to be, and I'm having a crack now because I don't really like the guy.
He tries to be a comedian half the time, which can be annoying as well.
It's ridiculous. I've actually once sprayed him when I worked at Fox Sports, so I was very proud of that day. It's the rules. And too often we've been on the receiving end of it. So, yeah, that's just the rules.
Yeah, I remember Samuela, I think at Campbelltown one night, checked someone in the in-goal and he went to the bin for the same thing. We didn't score in that 10-minute period while they were a man down, but admittedly, I think we only had one set on their goal line, but we did burn our challenge, Adel. I don't want to have a go at Appy Coruscant, your mate, but is that a spot you should not use your challenge, or do you think he maybe used it? It was a case where Warriors were 20 metres out from their own in goal. Samuela had a hand on the play of the ball. The ref had called tackle complete, and then the hand was still in there. Is that somewhere where you shouldn't burn your challenge that earlier because they're a man down? That's why they roll the dice.
Well, I'm in the privileged position where I've got contacts with people who work in the NRL referees, right? And if you look back in the history of the captain's challenge, referees don't actually let you challenge that anymore. So if the referee calls held and there's a situation after the held call and you try to challenge it, the referee will actually tell you you cannot challenge that. That's after the held call. It's the one part you can't actually challenge. So the fact we were allowed to challenge it, because what the boys challenged was, and Uppy says this to him, the boys challenged that it wasn't a strip. And Uppy says to him, and then Adam G says to Uppy, he says, it's the fact that I called held. He goes, well, that's not what we challenged, and you didn't tell me that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the club, and it's not going to be public, inquires about that, because in past, referees have actually turned around and said, you cannot challenge that call. So I'm surprised, because the challenge was it wasn't a strip. That's what the challenge was, because if it wasn't a strip, well, then I don't have a problem. And I don't think it was a strip by Samuela. But where the referee has come back is they said, no, we've called held. That's why it's a penalty. So I actually think the challenge shouldn't have been allowed in the first place.
Okay, fair point. It was a magical 7 minutes, Adel, before half-time. 33rd minute, we get our first try of the night. We're 55 metres out. There's a shift right. Jock Madden doesn't throw the best ball to Adam Dewey, but I think he notices Luke Metcalf trailing a little bit slowly on the inside, jumps off his right foot, goes through and throws the pass to Tavana for his debut try.
Yeah, I think we benefited from the fact that we've got a really strong ball-carrying half who likes to play on the back of shape in that situation against guys that might be a little bit tired. That was just Adam. His ability to have his big body and carry and put a fend on Metcalf. We'll talk about the Warriors' edges a little bit later, but yeah, that was just Adam's individual strength to be able to make a break there, and yeah, Tino gets his first try.
We actually drop it off the kickoff, but they give it back. And then in the ensuing set, 40 metres out, Jock Madden puts up a bomb. It goes relatively deep. The difference is this time Tavana puts in an outstanding chase, competes for the ball, gets a ricochet, Taruva on the inside to Kai Pearce-Paul. Is that a big difference this year, Coach? Our guys, I don't know if it's something that's being coached or whether it's just an individual mentality, players competing for the ball, attacking for bombs, because I thought in the past we weren't doing it as often.
No, I think I disagree. I think we've done it in the past. I recall back a couple of years ago when Aiden Teaser was in our side, we used to do it quite a bit for Jareem. I think having Tino there means he's someone that's got a really good vertical. So I guess strategically they're looking and going, well, let's give him opportunities where we can put it in that spot. I mean, respectfully, there's no point doing that if Tito's on the wing. So it's more of identifying strengths in some of our players. It's why Melbourne would kick to Eli Katoa, or the Warriors usually kick to Halasima. It's attacking the strengths of our game, and there's a bit of risk in that as well. Like if you're not kicking deeper and you're not trying to put the ball towards the 10-metre line or inside the 10, it does mean that if the Warriors do catch the ball, you're sacrificing that little bit of yardage for a contest. So there is a little bit of risk reward with it, and it's not as big a risk. So I don't mind it, but yeah, I mean, we at the end of the day we got lucky. The ball does bounce off Tino and come backwards, but you make your own luck, and the boys were there in the right position, and yeah, we'll take that every day of the week.
Is that why? Might have been Newcastle last year. I remember there was a side specifically that the ball would go in the air, land inside the 20, and they generally wouldn't compete. Is that something that why would you coach sort of against it competing? Is it just for that reason that you just mentioned?
Well, you've got to have strength in the air to be able to compete. I mean, like I said, there's no point if you don't have guys that are good leapers and can't really catch the ball in the air. Well, there's no point really doing it. It also depends on the time of game is really important. I think that's a big focus. You watch Penrith in the back end of a game, they won't compete on a high ball. They'll just make sure their edges have got a straight line. They'll let the guy catch it, and as soon as he catches it, they'll tackle him. So it sort of depends on the moments in a game and the time periods and how you think things are going. Who's also the guy on the opposition side? If you're kicking at Reece Walsh compared to kicking at I don't know, use a fullback that's good under the high ball. Teddy's pretty good under the high ball, but sometimes it can be that as well.
40 seconds before half-time, a huge play in the game. Appy puts Royce Hunt over. He gets a bit of redemption for last week when he went over against South Sydney and spilt the ball over the line. What did you see in that try?
Big boy energy from Royce. I mean, it's a play now, isn't it? He's going to threaten that. He did it a couple of times. Did he do one against the Titans last year? I think in the last round of the year. I think he scored one doing that. Look, he's a threat. I mean, he's a big body. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him do that a couple of times where Uppy jumps out and gives him the ball against the grain. I'd like to see Royce coming back against a lazy defender. So, yeah, it's just big brute strength there.
Appy very crafty. I noticed before he looked down to the ball, he looked right twice. He was never probably going to pass it right. And then when he passed it left, he sort of his hands motioned in a way that was going to be a long pass and put Royce in, maybe just keeping the defence in two minds on their try line there.
Well, to go back to last week, and there was a lot of criticism around our stuff in and around the yard there. I think the one thing we've got to understand, and to Justin Horror and Willie Mason, who criticised Appy during the week, Appy's a threat, and we have scored so many tries. I remember Stefano used to score quite a few tries. Fanua's done it. Sione Finu's done it. Now Royce Hunt's done it. Those plays are actually attacking plays. It's not just us laying a line, to just get to a point and taking a hit up. Our hooker is able to create spaces for our middle forwards, and there's so much interest and there's so much deception in what he does, is the fact that they are actually attacking plays. So we can't take it when it's good and then criticize it when it's bad. So I just think that it's part of our structure. It's a part of our football. That close to the line, we are going to test the opposition. Where I think we've got to be careful is you don't want to do it with Alex, safe up. You don't want to do it with Twiley. I mean, Twiley's scored 2 tries and they've all been, I think one was off a bomb. So he's not someone that's going to, it doesn't have good footwork at the line or can't really barge over like a Royce Hunt. So I think there's specific guys we can do it with, but yeah, not everybody.
Tigers players in the past, Adel, might have, like Royce last year, languishing at times in State Cup, maybe a little bit overweight by his own admission. But this year, it's almost like having a totally new player. I mean, he's been outstanding.
Yeah, and laterally in particular. And I know a lot of people want Bunty to play, but if Royce is playing, I don't think Bunty's playing. I think it's one of the two. And that's where one of the things I noticed of Royce's game this year is laterally. Look, you can be whatever you want to be in attack. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to do your job defensively. And Royce's biggest problem last year is there was too many times where he'd be the last man up off a tackle and he's a late player coming back to the defensive line and the play's going, or laterally they'll turn players back on the inside and you can see he's not moving as quick. That's the part of his game that has really improved this year, and that's all come down to the work he's done in preseason. And that's the part of Bunty's game that I said in the trial games that I was a bit worried about. So, full credit to Royce, and if he keeps going and touch wood, stay injury free, he's going to be a big asset for us this year.
16-10 at half-time. That first 20 minutes of the second half, we had to repel a lot of pressure, and there were a couple of really great efforts. I think Samuel Afainu batted the ball dead once when they were pouring through, and Dallin Wateni Zalesniak went up in the air, and there were 2 or 3 guys that made sure he bounced the ball over the try line. What impressed you most in that first 20 minutes was the ability to defend our try line?
We broke their spirits in that first 20 minutes, Eddie. We're going to talk about our tries. We attacked the game with our defence there, and that's where we actually – the Warriors have found things to come easy off the back of being able to create ruck speed with their edge forwards, their middles, Wade Egan out of dummy half, their running of Tanner Boyd, all that sort of stuff has been able to dominate teams in the first couple of weeks. We put a stop to that, and we put a stop to that with a lot of quality. And what that basically meant was, and it's just the part psychologically in rugby league that I think we need to get better at as a team, and that was the first step of us doing it yesterday, is we can attack teams with our defence. If you can, this has been the DNA of Penrith for the last few years, right? They'll give you football on their try line and they'll get a bigger share of possession for 15, 20 minutes. They'll repel you, and then it almost becomes mental, and they turn around and they say, geez, it doesn't matter what we do, we're not going to get through them. And they're still thinking about their attack. And I actually think that's what happened on the weekend. I think with the fact that we were able to grind that first 15 to 20 minutes of the second half and put a little bit of doubt in the Warriors' mind and think to themselves, they're not going to come through us here, or they're not going to score points, or they're not going to come easy, meant that defensively that their energy wasn't really great.
I actually give credit to you. On Tuesday, I sort of said, well, this is our biggest challenge as a forward pack, and you threw it back on me and said, well, this is the Warriors' biggest challenge coming up against our pack. Is there something specifically that our forward pack as a collective is doing better? Is it in contact or in wrestle, first contact this year?
Ooh, there's a phrase I want to use, but I can't really use it. Where I was going to change the phrase, and I'm still going to use a word that I shouldn't use. So tough, we're tough, and the C word.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we are. We're a group. We're a really tough forward pack. You can tell the boys are aggressive. They're physical. They're not going to take bullshit from anybody. And their strength is in their numbers. And the fact that when we're making interchanges, we're tough. And it feels like as a forward pack, because we've got that, no one needs to conserve energy. They can work as hard as they can. They've got their backs doing their carriage if they need to. They specifically know what their responsibilities are. And we're not seeing that little bit of laziness that we've seen in the past. And if you look back at, like I said, the South game the week before, nothing went through our middle. And there must be, and I'm presuming, there must be a pack there about They're not coming through us.
Terrell May only played 50 minutes. Was that the strength of the pack this year that he hasn't had to carry the load? Better balance?
Yeah, I think it's the strength of our numbers in our middle forwards. I know people have been critical in the past about our bench. Technically, we used 4 middles on the weekend. Because Sione came on, Royce came on, played as genuine middle forwards. Latu played in the middle, and so did Safar. So we went 4 out with our bench, with all guys coming on and playing in the middle. They may not be specifically middle players, but they all played in the middle. So I think there's a bit of trust and a bit of belief in our team to say, hey, we can do this different ways in the middle. We can do it with, out and out front rowers. We can do it with guys who can come in with a bit of subtlety about how they play in Latu. And then we've got a guy who's a little bit more of a back rower, but can also do a role for you in the middle. So you middles, front load all your energy, red line, go as hard as you can. If you need to make a change, we'll make a change for you.
First try of the second half, it took 21 minutes, but it was a cracker, Coach. It was 30 metres out from our own line, shift left from Appy into Latu and Jock Madden. They both straighten up a little bit. I think Samuela maybe attracts Tanner Boyd, and Adam sees that space on the inside, goes through again, and draws the fullback nicely and puts Jareem Buller over.
Yeah, I think that was the start of the spirit we had just broken. Look, I'm going to sound negative here. Sound a bit Eddie. I'm going to be a bit
Go
Eddie
for
here.
it, mate.
Look, I don't think that was good attack. I think that was poor Warriors defence. That was horrendous defence, actually. Tanner Boyd took a shortcut, first of all, on Samuela. So that's very, very poor. I would hate to be in the video of the Warriors right edge from the weekend, because they're going to get absolutely hammered and sprayed. And it was just poor defence, poor connectivity from the Warriors. But again, Adam's threat with his ball running created that.
So even the pass,
capitalised on that. I won't say he created it; he capitalised on it.
It was a simple. It was a simple draw and pass, but I like how he just drew the fullback a little bit wider to create that space for Jareem to go on the inside. There was a try for the Warriors, though, to make us all nervous. It's never easy for West Tigers. 11 minutes to go to make it 22-14. They shift right, edge back roll, perhaps gets Jock Madden to bite, and Nickel Cookstad goes between Macassini and Jock Madden. Was that a defensive decision by Jock Madden there?
No. Jock did the right thing. Hamasi needs to learn closer to our try line, and he will, being aggressive and being positive. And he did it multiple times prior to that on Chance, especially someone like Chance, who's not the greatest of ball players in that situation. I think if we're positive, we'll get a better result. They may still score, but it makes it a little bit tougher. When you slide on your try line there, it's almost impossible to stop anyone, to be honest.
8 minutes before the end of the game, we get the match sealer again, shifting left, Appy to Safar to Jock Madden. And then Adam Dewey, I think, does a really good job then, because he beats the centre, and then the winger, Wateni Zelezniak, sort of comes past the ball and he holds it up, puts Luke Lalili away, and finds Jock Madden backing up on the inside.
Yeah, once again, horrendous defence from the Warriors on that right edge. To be fair, that's been their edge that's been targeted. So I'm guessing we come up with a bit of a plan there, because their decision making wasn't great. They put Chance there, and yeah, it was just poor from the Warriors. Adam does a good job to set back, sort of move while the ball's in the air to come back off his left foot, and then executes that pass really well. So yeah, full credit. I was about to say full credit to the boys. Great job by the boys there to be able to nail that, because that's the other thing. Like, those situations and poor defence can be presented. You've got to be able to capitalise on that opportunity.
I don't know whether Benji and the coaching staff were listening on Tuesday's preview, but it didn't certainly surprise you, Coach, because you predicted that Jock Madden would play more that 7 role. He did all the kicking. I think he had 17 kicks. He had a lot more passing and ball receipts. Do you think that suited the way Adam played, to get Adam a little bit wider running onto the ball?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much the injury had to do with that. But yeah, I mean, Jock, and what Jock did well on the weekend, his IQ, his kicking IQ was the key for us. His strength is not his long kicking game. I think he knows that, so I think he uses to kick the ball a little bit earlier in the set. But yeah, I think it worked well.
The final try, it was the icing on the cake with 10 seconds to go. I suppose it's been a criticism in the past, is we often give up tries when it sort of doesn't matter. But we went for the jugular. I think Jock Manning gets a ball batted down by Luke Metcalf, and Jareen Buller pounces on it and puts Tito in the corner. I was happy for Tito because he's had to do a job for the team the past couple of weeks, but he loves getting over that try line, and he's a great finisher.
Well, we almost did concede a try because realistically, Metcalf probably should take that intercept. So, yeah, I think I get what we were doing there, but I think you got to ice the game a little bit better, to be honest. And that was fortuitous that the ball did bounce our way. But, yeah, I agree with you. I'm so happy for Tito in that situation. And Tito loves to layer up, so it probably would have hurt the Warriors fans even more, which I'm all about.
Absolutely. Who was your best on-ground coach? Because on Clause Out, we had a difference of opinion, no surprise. I think one went for Adam Dewey, went for Alex Twal. Who was your best on ground?
Well, I'll tell you, Eddie, you might say something different here to me, right? So every week in our South Logan Magpies coaches chat, we've got to give 3-2-1 away, basically for our team. And our head coach, Carmichael Hunt, last week did something really weird. He said he gave 3 points to one guy, and then he gave 1 point to 3 different guys. And I said, and we sort of argued it, and we said,
still adds up to 6, I guess.
There's 6 points to give away. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to what Kay did.
Yep.
I'm going to give 6 guys 1 point. Can I do that?
Fire away. You can do whatever you like. It's your show, Coach.
I think honestly, there were 6 guys to me that I think I named that I think had a big influence on us winning the football game. I thought Appy was one. I thought Alex Twal was another one. I think our 2 back rowers who have been so underrated so far this year are the next 2. I think Adam Dewey is my 5th, and I think Tito Taruva was my 6th. I think they were the 6 guys that had a big influence on us winning that football game on the weekend.
What's the thing we've got to most improve on coming out of that game? Anything from an attack or defence point of view? I know obviously the slow starts, we've addressed that, but something either with the ball or defensively that we've got to get better at coming up against them.
It's one of those things you just got to continue to get better at throughout the year, and that's defending your errors, especially errors coming out of yardage. Look, our football, it's going to be tough because obviously the next 3 to 4 weeks or however long Jerome is out is probably going to look a little bit different to when he's playing. It's also very different not having Taylor in the side because I think he's a out and out target. Well, same as Stafford on the other side. So, and respectfully to Hamasi playing as a centre now compared to him playing on the wing, and same with Tito on the other side, it's a little bit different to how you give them the football, different to what you give Taylor. And so it's more prioritising winning football games with however we need to win it, and more importantly, probably with our defence over the next 3 or 4 weeks. And I heard you talk about the fact that we've only conceded 50 points in 3 weeks. I think that's got to be our key. What our average points we're conceding for the next few weeks is. I don't mind I don't want to lose a football game, but if we're losing football games like we did against the Rabbitohs at 16-14 or 20-18, hey, it sort of tells us that we're in football games and things aren't going to come easy for the opposition sides. And that's what we want to build.
You mentioned the 2 back rowers, Kai Pearce-Paul and Samuel Afinu, but Alex Twal, he's had his critics on this panel as well last year, but his football this year, I think he played 70 minutes at lock on the weekend. What's different about his game this year, or is he just building on what he did last year where he had a solid year?
You know what? I don't think I'm seeing anything different. It's not fair. He's gone to another level, but it's not like we're talking about going from, I always use ratings out of 10, a 7 out of 10 to or 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. He's just getting better like most front rowers do. He's just getting better every year basically. I think Rob had a crack at me about this. I always say he's a 7.5 out of 10. Again, I don't think it was more than a 7.5, 8 out of 10. What he's doing really, really well at the moment is his threat of being able to offload the football is creating a little bit of doubt in the opposition team. And he's obviously brought in that little bit of the ability to get to the line, have the ball in 2 hands, and if he needs to, and his halves are calling for it out the back, he's being able to give it to him. But I haven't seen anything different in Alex Twal from from a base standard to what I've seen in the last couple of years. I've always had that opinion of him. I'll tell you the one thing I have seen different, actually. Alex has always had that one or two errors in his game that he hasn't had this year yet. And touch wood, that doesn't happen this week. But he's always had that one or two type of errors where you sit there and go, well, you got to catch that, Alex. And that's the part probably I haven't seen yet this year. And touch wood, it stays the same.
I guess it's a fairly settled side for next week, you think, because obviously no Jerome, no Stafford, no Taylor May. You wouldn't think they'd switch the wings up, given Tavana had a promising debut. Alex Seyfarth, you mentioned, Alex Twiles had the odd error in him. Seyfarth certainly has had discipline and error issues in the past. I think he only played 20, 25 minutes, but there was no rubbish in his game.
Yeah, and I think our bench, I don't think there's a preconceived plan with five of them. I think Tristan Hope is a chance of playing every single week because it depends on how up he's going. Obviously, the outside back on the bench is always only if necessary. But yeah, I mean, we're in a position right now that if you're one of the boys playing, you know that if you do things that are going to cost us games or are going to do things outside of what's best for the team, you're probably not going to play the following week. So I think all the boys understand that there's a real big battle for spots at the moment, and you've got to be able to take your opportunities when they come, and no matter whether it's 1 minute or 80 minutes, whatever's being asked of you, do it at the best of your ability.
Big Easter Monday game coming up, Coach, against the Paramata side that were blown off the paddock by Penrith. I guess that's been happening to every team that's come up against Penrith last year, but Paramata, I know we'll preview the game on Tuesday. They throw a lot of footy at you, but should we be confident going into that game?
If we can complete, yes. Is Iangi out?
He had a syndesmosis ankle, so I imagine he'd be out.
Yeah, it's a big loss for them, to be honest. I think he's been a bit underrated on what he's been able to do for 12 months. Look, it's the same as every other football game. Complete well, control where you give the opposition possession. Parramatta's a front-running type of team. They like to get in front, and they like to get, they're the type of team that's not going to grind really well. They want to dominate possession, and when they dominate, they carry on a little bit, and they'll enjoy playing on the front foot. So if the position is equal and we can get our share, it'll take us a long way. Again, we're the better forward pack, 100%. It's interesting they've started to come with Dylan Walker starting last week, which surprised me. I wouldn't be surprised if they switched that back up and he comes off the bench. He's a really big indicator for them in how they play. I just think the same formula as last week. Outside backs carrying the football a lot out of yardage, get our middles to win the ruck and take time away from Moses as much as possible.
And just from a coaching point of view, I suppose dealing with success, it's something that maybe West Tigers haven't been the best at in the past. We know we haven't won 3 games in a row since 2018. Is that something you have to drill into the players at training, or is it something that they just know? They just know that, in their heads they've got to be switched on because Parramatta coming off a loss are going to come out firing.
This isn't a team of the past. This is a brand new team, and everything they're talking about building stuff to create their own identity and being who they want to be. Well, every week is an opportunity to do that. So I'm sure that message is being chatted by both our leaders and our coaching staff every single week.
All right, Coach. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight. I know you're still heartbroken, and hopefully we took your mind off the last-minute loss for South Logan today, but you're hopefully going to be joining us in the studio next Monday night. Is that right, coming down to Sydney for the Easter Monday game against Para?
Yeah, real special for me next week. I get to take my nephew who's never been to a rugby league game in his life. He lives in Perth, so I get to take him to a first-ever Tigers game, so I'll be pretty pumped for that next week. So I'll probably be in a good mood because I'll have him with me. So, yeah, I'm excited for that.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you to our viewers out there. Make sure you stick around for Tuesday. We'll be doing the preview, of course, the game against Paramata, and Westlife will be on Wednesday night with Josh. Thanks, Adel. See you next week.
See you guys.